morning, everyone, and welcome to the CEO Connect gathering on behalf of the Shared Value Africa Initiative and Global Reporting Initiative. I'm Joanne Joseph. Great to be with you this morning. I'll be facilitating our discussions. And happy Spring Day, by the way. I completely forgot about it. I mean, look at Tiki Barnard there in her floral outfit. Yes, Tiki. I'm sorry that I didn't dress up for spring. It might have something to do with the fact that it was 10.5 degrees when I left home this morning. But yeah, we have hopefully exhaled the last rusty breath of winter, and we are going into spring and going in on a very positive note with this discussion, certainly on the first day of September. So as you're aware, CEO Connect reflects the leadership, both CEO and senior executives coming together to address key topics. And they are topics focused specifically on the sustainability, the shared value community. So it's really lovely to see you here as we tackle the theme, Beyond Compliance Lies Trust. But what does that actually allude to? NAVEX Risk and Compliance reminds us of how the mindsets of investors have changed over the years. ESG has become a priority for investors who are far more likely than ever to vote with their feet. Now, they also tell us that investment portfolios are now adding ESG information as part of their investment decision criteria, and they're including it in newly created financial products to appeal to those who want their investments to align with their values. So that presents a challenge to the business world, and these standards can no longer, therefore, be entered into begrudgingly. There has to be the realization that ethics must come to the fore in environmental, social, and governance issues, and there must not only be a tolerance of this change, it must be embraced in a manner that lauds good ethics and, as a fortunate byproduct, positively impacts on the bottom line as well, particularly in the event where companies really commit themselves to this approach. Now, in many parts of the world, it is dawning on business people that whoever doesn't show this level of commitment to ESG compliance is doing conscious harm to their businesses. They're doing conscious harm to their brand and their customers at the same time. Today, we ask, what will it take for businesses in Africa to embrace this issue wholeheartedly? You'll hear from a number of speakers this morning, and I'll encourage you to pose questions and you'll give us your comments as well in response to what you hear. If at any point in the discussion you want to participate, you have something that you want to add that you believe will add value to the discussion, or you want to raise an issue that we haven't already looked at, please feel free. Just put up your hand and let's make this as interactive a discussion as possible. For those of you who are on social media, our hashtags this morning are hashtag CEO Connect, hashtag Shared Value Africa, and hashtag Sustainability. For now, I want to introduce you to Sazini Mojapelo, member of the Shared Value Africa Initiative and Shift Impact Board Africa. She's also a shared value advocate, and she's been a vocal supporter of the Shared Value Initiative and the Shared Value Business Management concept for many years now. Sazini, would you please come up and welcome our guests?
Good morning. His Excellency, the Swiss Ambassador, Dr. Nicolas Sproul, Franziska Sproul, Elko van der Enden, Dr. Ndidi from the International Sustainability Standards Board. I don't see her. Oh, there you are. And Bruce from the International Accounting Standards Board. Tiki. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My task is a very simple one, and I'll be very quick, is to welcome you on behalf of GRI and the Shared Value Africa Initiative. I'm sure you will all agree that corporate sustainability and the ESG agenda has become more pronounced over the last decade, obviously accelerated by the need for us to mitigate climate change. So today, as we embark on this conversation and looking at the dialogue we're going to have this morning, I think it has become important for all companies to look at the issues around double materiality. The word always gets stuck. Yes. But I think more important, from the Shared Value Africa Initiative, we have for the longest of time advocated for companies to start looking at how they drive profit with a purpose. That in itself is embedded by the fact that to drive ESG, the social agenda is key, the business agenda is key, but companies can achieve the greatest impact by not only looking at the bottom line, but looking at the triple bottom line. Obviously, as we look at the GRI and the standards that they put forward, it becomes important for the disclosures, mandatory or regulatory, and the voluntary ones as well. But we say it's important to move beyond that. It is important for companies to start looking at their core business and become more purpose-led. And we see that. So today, as we engage in different discussions, and of course, as we learn, we will not only hear from the GRI, we'll not only hear from our colleagues from the International Standards Board, but we'll hear from leading companies that have taken on a more purpose-led agenda. And you will eventually, I hopefully see, the collaborative and synergy between the GRI and the shared value agenda as we have these different discussions. So from the board and from the CEO, Tiki, we welcome you to this dialogue and we look forward to engaging further. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Mojapelo. And I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion, hearing from companies that are forging ahead with this agenda over the course of this morning. It'll be lovely to be able to compare notes and have a look at the personalized experiences of the companies that we are speaking to. So next, let me introduce you to the Swiss ambassador to South Africa, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Mauritius, and Namibia, His Excellency, Dr. Nicholas Bruhl. As you may be aware, a strong bilateral relationship exists between Switzerland and South Africa. Now, I'm not sure you're aware, but last month the two countries signed a $3.5 million sustainable long-term finance facility with the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs and the World Bank. And it's hoped that this finance can be leveraged to address South Africa's sustainable development goals and our energy transition. I mean, it's not an easy transition in our country. We were just having a discussion outside about the difficulty of getting all our citizens on board. And a country like ours, with the kind of economic deprivation we have, that is a very difficult task in itself. So it's against this backdrop that all of this work has to be done, and that I welcome you, Your Excellency, to come and address us, tell us a little bit more about your shared initiative. Thank you.
Just first two personal remarks. I wasn't aware that today is a spring day, but that's fine. I've seen 2 days ago there was some snow, okay, only a little bit snow compared to Switzerland in, I think, Eastern Cape and KZN. I was quite impressed. But I'm here now since almost 3 years, and for me it's almost all the time summer, I must say. Not for you, I know it's quite chilly, specifically in Johannesburg and Pretoria, but nevertheless, and the other personal remark, I was already here in 93, 94 as a very young diplomat during my trainee program. There was your first election for everyone, black and white, famous 27th of April, 94. Now I came back almost 30 years later as the head of mission. So I have another perspective now, but still I'm impressed by your country. And just that you know my background, I'm here now since almost 3 years. I have another year. And then I have to move to another country. As you know, as diplomats, we are modern nomads. Nomads, we have to move. And normally we cannot stay longer than 4 years in South Africa because South Africa is too popular. And there are some colleagues who are still already waiting when this guy is leaving here. So at least, and it's not for every country all over the world. So I tell you, so this is the asset for South Africa. Just some personal remarks, the beginning of my short speech. Representatives from the private sector, CEOs and business leaders, government representatives, representatives of civil society and the private sector, representatives of the donor community, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I want to thank the organizers, the Shared Value Africa Initiative and the Global Reporting Initiative for this wonderful event, the CEO Connect 2022, under the theme Beyond Compliance Lies Trust, a very important issue. On behalf of the Embassy of Switzerland to South Africa, as well as the Swiss Economic Cooperation Development, SECO, I would like to wish you a very warm welcome. I do like to mention that accountability and transparency are necessary for building the trust needed for resilient and responsible economies. And I'm coming from Switzerland, and I tell you that's a very important issue as well. It is without doubt that the incorporation of environmental, social and governance aspects into business processes can enhance access to markets and supply chain sustainability, thus contributing to several sustainable development goals. Progressively, there are regulatory dynamics which demand and reward companies for complying with sustainability requirements. For instance, in Switzerland, against the background of the Responsible Business Initiative, requirements pertaining to sustainability, reporting, and due diligence got increased. These rules apply to Swiss domiciled companies, irrespective of where their operations take place. Also in the EU, there is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the EU Green Deal, which require greater sustainability along the value chains for businesses and consumers. Through trade and business relations, these expectations will extend beyond the EU to other regions of the world, including Africa. Sustainability reporting goes beyond meeting compliance requirements. Sustainability reporting is a vital step towards achieving sustainable and inclusive growth that balances long-term profitability with social justice and environmental care. In other words, reporting should not just be for the sake of reporting. In that case, it becomes a regulatory burden. However, when sustainability reporting is embedded in business operations, it is a tool to create valuable data and analysis. This can improve business performance, drive the business towards greater purposes, and underpin effective communication and interaction with stakeholders by highlighting the business organization's impacts, which is the base for creating, building, and sustaining trust. As the theme says, beyond compliance lies trust. At the end of the day, it is about people. When there is trust, the business growth can be sustained. I'm now almost 30 years in the Swiss foreign business, and I can tell you at the end it's about people. Therefore, investing in sustainability performance and reporting is good for business. In closing, let me highlight that sustainability reporting standards, such as the Global Reporting Initiative, are increasingly gaining relevance in investments, processes, due diligence, risk management, and investment monitoring. This is of great importance to us. Hence our partnership with the GRI in the implementation of the Sustainability Reporting for Responsible Business Program in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. I thank you with appreciation for your time, from your business schedules, and for your attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Your Excellency, thank you so much for that. I love your use of the word embedding sustainability. I think that is the idea, not to think of this as a kind of add-on or a nice to have if we can make it work, but that really is central to the kind of trust, solving the trust deficit that seems to exist in business and everywhere else right now. Thank you for that, Your Excellency. So you've given us a very good political overview of the bilateral work that's been going on in the background, certainly how that has become effective in the EU. And I'm really hoping that this warm relationship between South Africa and Switzerland will continue from a sustainability point of view. But on that note, let's get some of the technical aspects of this now, a technical perspective from the Head of Cooperation and Development, South Africa, the State Secretariat of Economic Affairs, SECO, at the Embassy of Switzerland in South Africa, Franziska Spori. Now, prior to her current post, Ms. Spori served as an economist and project manager for the SECO in Bern, where she was responsible for the macroeconomic support division's portfolio in Colombia and South Africa. So welcome to you, Ms. Spori.
Thank you, Joanna. Let me start with a little joke. I mean, about Spring Day. I took my warm jacket with me, and I'm from Switzerland, but I find it freezing cold in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I can always say that after the ambassador, so I'm always happy to start after him. Thank you for having us here. Let me start with a little quote from a trainer and coach from Ghana. His name is Bernard Kelvin Clive. He says, "When trust is broken, business is lost." And I think this is true. And our role as development cooperation, as partner in this, is to forge alliances, to build trust, to facilitate exchanges between the different stakeholders. And I think we are all here from different sides, from government, from the private sector, from civil society. And I think only all of us together can build this future that is sustainable. And this is our key role overall. And I think the Global Reporting Initiative is a good example of how we work and why it is so important for our cooperation. I don't want to say too many things on what we do. I'm happy to give you more information for those who are interested. And I also just want to be here to say, please come to us if you see events, organizations, exchanges, dialogues, you want us in. I think the ambassador, my team, we are here for you. And I think it goes beyond specific projects or money, but really to have this dialogue. For SECO, what we do in the country, our theme is to support South Africa towards a sustainable future, but also to increase competitiveness. And I think that targets also what you as companies need to do. And I think it's this balance, right? How can we grow sustainably, but also become more competitive? And I mean, I think especially for the large companies, the whole GRI topic, ESG, is a chance to become more competitive, because if you do better than the others, you have an advantage. But of course, at the same time, we have the challenge and I discussed it before at breakfast, for the SMMEs. So how can we take them along? How can we help them as development cooperation, as organizations, as big companies, so that they also can adhere to those principles? And probably there, one thing that the Swiss government is good in is to have pragmatic, simple approaches, where I think South Africa sometimes, especially the government, hopefully nobody hears me, has some challenges. And I think it is very important to find solutions that are ideal for the specific level. And I think that's also why we are here to help finding solutions for the weaker in the value chain. Maybe just to give you an idea, so we work on kind of two pillars. On one hand, we support the private sector through organizations such as GRI to become more viable, but also more resource efficient. That's very important for us. That's one point of entry. I mean, you could do many other things, but resource efficiency is how we try to tackle it. And of course, establishing favorable economic framework conditions. And that is what you mentioned, for instance, our work with the World Bank on a sustainable finance facility, especially on the capital market, but we also work with the Reserve Bank on resolution frameworks, deposit insurance scheme, so to ensure that the overall framework conditions in the country are stable, so that business and overall can operate. I think the program we support through GRI, and maybe just one side comment, I think Douglas is really doing an amazing job. I was impressed again this morning. He knows everyone. And I think you need these kind of networkers to connect different dots. But yeah, so I think what we do, one of the key areas SECO is working in is to create these sustainable global value chains. And again, I think it shows how each and every one of us is needed to achieve good results. And maybe just to give you two ideas what we do along these value chains. One project we support it's the Swiss import program, but it's basically about supporting our countries like South Africa to export. So support of the last mile to bring their products to the markets. For instance, there we work with business support organizations such as TI, KZN, or Westgrove, just to name a few. And we also work with TTIC on smaller companies to improve or adhere to quality standards so that they are able to export. And one example on the resource efficiencies, where we again work with TTIC, but also with the National Cleaner Production Center on greening the industrial parks. I think there we also have links to Nestle, amongst others. So yeah, I think last part, of course, coming also, as Joanna said, from the macroeconomic support division, I think the role of government remains important. We need to work together. We need to understand each other's needs, also struggles. And so I think we can't leave them out. And I think we are on a good way with such initiatives we are supporting. Maybe let me just conclude again with the words of Bernard Kelvin Clive. Consistently delivering on your promise value reinforces trust. And I think this is why we are here. We all need to deliver consistently so that we all can contribute to this sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Spory. When a Swiss person confirms that it's cold in Joburg, it is cold. I want to thank you very much for that, and I'll tell you why your words appealed to me. There were a couple of things that you said there that I latched onto. The balance of becoming more competitive while growing sustainably. It absolutely can be done together, although it is somewhat of a challenge because it requires rethinking about things that we have always done in the past. But also the idea of SMMEs. I mean, we're looking to them right now to grow our economy, and as they are birthed, they need to be groomed into the habit of sustainability. And we've certainly got to dedicate some time to thinking about how we go about educating them in that regard. So thank you very much for that. And I'm going to now introduce our next speaker. I want to get to the crux of how, at this point, sustainability directly impacts our future. We're going to have a guest joining us remotely right now, and I'd like to welcome Chief Executive Officer of the Global Reporting Initiative, Mr. Elko van den Enden. He joins us remotely from Brussels to discuss this. Do we have him on the line?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much, Mr. van den Enden. He's responsible for overseeing the GRI Strategic Work Program and Organizational Management Work Program. He's well placed to do this as the author of over 50 published articles on governance and reporting. He's also held a range of senior roles with listed companies, including as head of Treasury, Risk Management and Tax. So I'd like to welcome you very much, Mr. van den Enden, and I'm going to ask you to please just share with us your views on the issue of business and sustainability directly impacting our future as people working in the realm of business.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege. And let me start with explaining you what the purpose of GRI is. Well, GRI basically enables both businesses as well as investors, as other stakeholders, to make calculated decisions on impacts based on facts and not on perceptions. And we do so by providing free and for the public good top quality standards that deal with impacts. And we couldn't have done that, and we couldn't have been where we are without help of our dear sponsors and partner SECO. So thank you very much again, and I hope that we have a very long and bright future together, because we need to, because environmental and social issues are greatly influencing our everyday life. And as we know, all these topics that we cover in our standards, they are connected, they are interdependent. Yes, there is connectivity between climate change and human rights, between the use of fossil fuels and social unrest. And I can get to that in a second. But let me first give you an overview of what's happening in the fast changing global reporting landscape for corporates. We see various initiatives, all at the same moment in time. We have the incorporation of the ISSB from the IFRS Foundation, which organization we have a very cordial relationship and a memorandum of understanding, and we will even grow our joint work programs soon. So the ISSB is about financial impacts sustainability topics have on the value creation of businesses itself. That's one. That's the financial side of sustainability reporting. Very important. The second one is in Europe, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which executing body, EFRAG, the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, is building standards in Europe, by the way, in cooperation and co-creation with GRI. And they, as already indicated, they build them based on the so-called double materiality principle. That basically means that it's not only about the financial impact of the reporting entity itself. No, it's also about the impact the reporting entity has on environment and socio-economic cohesion. So, to translate it, financial materiality is outside in. What are the effects of climate change on my bottom line, on my organization? Whereas double materiality is about inside out. What are the effects on society, on the environment, by me as an organization pursuing its strategic objectives? Then we have another initiative in the United States, the SEC, with their draft climate standard. And it will not come as a surprise, that is solely about financial materiality. We, as GRI, cooperate with everyone that supports and understands our purpose. So we hope that the future landscape will indeed be built and based upon what we call two pillars: the financial reporting side and the impact reporting side of equal importance. And yes, that includes, when it's on equal importance, a level of assurance on the reports that have been published, like will become mandatory in Europe. It will, I think, help curbing down the nasty effects we see on greenwashing. And greenwashing is basically, in my view, nothing more and nothing less than fraud. Why do I say that so strong? In fact, when you publish a report to influence decision-making of stakeholders, be it investors or local communities or pension funds or whatever, and you do that by not providing facts, but made up stories of exaggerated stories, then you are fooling your audience. And when you do that financially, with financial reports, we would call that fraud. If we think it's of equal importance and it's about credibility of the reporting entity, and if we believe that impacts and sustainability are of equal importance as the financial results of organizations, then I think we need also a level of assurance on those impact reports. I come from business, and I love profitable companies. Companies that are not profitable have an issue because they cannot invest in transformation, in innovation, in job creation, in safe workplaces. So that's why I am worried on some current events in the United States. The states of Texas and Florida and West Virginia have introduced in their legislation that prohibits in Florida state pension funds to invest in ESG ranked organizations. It is about the yield, the gain, the profit, and not about the impact the invested fund has on the environment and society. In Texas, financial institutions that have certain portfolios that do not include huge investments in fossil fuel organization and companies are banned from doing business in Texas with governmental organizations. So there again, you see, by law, you see that ESG management and impact management is being curbed. Why do I think these types of legislation do not make sense from a business point of view? And then I will come to my conclusion. I'm a former risk manager of a multinational organization. Assume you would be in retail and you would, like our colleagues from Nestlé, and you would not take global warming into account in your energy usage predictions for cooling and the rising energy prices. I don't think your investors will be quite happy. You have to take them into account and mitigate those risks. If you are a platform organization and you would not take into account social unrest in your warehouses, you will pay dearly because you will be faced with a mutiny amongst your workforce. And last but not least, if you are in the mining industry and you would not have your internal governance around anti-bribery in order, you will be swamped in due time with court cases that will greatly harm your reputation and thus your business. So we speak here, in fact, about 3 topics that cover the letters E, S, and G. And that has nothing to do in managing those risks with altruistic behavior or wanting to save the planet. You have to, of course, if you're smart. But even if you would not like doing that for that reason, then this is just proper risk management. It is good governance. Not heeding and taking these effects and these topics into account, a modern organization can just not do. So where will the future of corporate reporting and sustainability reporting go to? To 2 pillars, the financial and the impact reporting side, of equal importance and both carried by assurance of a third party. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. van den Enden. Lovely hearing from you this morning, and what you say just makes so much sense. But before we let you go, just a quick question. You've spoken about American legislation working towards, or working, I should say, in opposition to sustainability in certain ways. Here in South Africa, there's certainly lip service towards working towards sustainability, but that isn't necessarily so in the legislation, in the implementation, government-wise. How does the private sector work with determination towards sustainability when the government is lagging behind, perhaps with legislation or implementation?
How long do you have? There are 3 varieties that we see when it comes to applying impact standards and our standards. And as you know, we are by far the largest used in the world. So you have countries where it's mandatory, or well, it will be introduced mandatory, and some stock markets enforcing it, like in Taiwan or Korea. We have the European initiative, blah, blah. Then you have the just voluntarily use, like the organizations in the room, because they know and understand that these topics are important to investors, to society, to the communities you operate in, your employees, and it's just good business, doing good business managing them. So they do it on a voluntary basis, whether the government says yes or no. And now we see something in between, and I call that the twilight zone. And we've seen that happening, by the way, in the United States, where a group of investors brought to vote into general shareholder meetings sustainability topics and the demand to the boards to start reporting. One example, Amazon and I believe it was also Microsoft were asked to start to report under GRI 207 tax, the tax transparency standard we have. So the boards of in this case, Amazon, objected and went to the SEC, Securities Exchange Committee, with the argument that tax is not a strategic topic, so not something that you could or should vote on a general shareholder meeting according to US regulations. And with a couple of billion of deferred tax assets and liability, but okay. That was their point. The SEC ruled against that and said that shareholders have the right to ask to vote on these topics since they do influence decision making and they are important to investors, shareholders from that lens. So it was brought into vote. It didn't make it, got only 21%. But I think this is only the top of the iceberg, where you will see huge investors putting pressures upon organizations to start reporting on their impacts. And if we look at the amount of consolidated capital in the Amazon case that supported this initiative, that was $3.8 trillion US of invested capital. That is massive. So when governments will not take this into account, you have organizations that know that this is just good business and will do it voluntarily, but you will see a new group of investors that see that either out of risk management or out of altruistic motives will force organizations to rethink their strategy around transparency and impact reporting.
Mr. van den Enden, thank you so much. Really fabulous having you with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Joining us there all the way from Belgium, Mr. Elko van den Enden. So I'm going to welcome another guest now from here at home, Dr. Ndidi Noli Edozien. He is from the International Sustainability Standards Board, and I'd like to welcome you up, please. Thank you. Apologies. I have regendered you. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Dr. Noli Edozien. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here. Very excited to join you. So excited also to have students in the room. Welcome. You're the future. We can't have this conversation without you. I was very fortunate to speak also at the University of Joburg earlier in the week. That was a really exciting conversation, and that was with accountants in particular. Also very excited to be here with my colleague, the International Accounting Standards Board, and more importantly, to be here with GRI. So I worked very closely with the GRI in introducing sustainability thinking and reporting at Dangote for 3.5 years. And GRI also worked very hard with the Nigerian Stock Exchange to introduce sustainability reporting, essentially bringing the government on board, which is one of the themes that was just suggested. And to be honest with you, I think that one of the big, and as a result of that, when I left Dangote, I joined the GRI Stakeholder Council. Right now, I sit here as a member of the International Sustainability Standards Board. So really, I am your member. I'm the Africa member, so I'm at your service. This is service more than anything else. I think from an ISSB perspective, and the reason why I'm here with my sister or brother or sibling board member, International Accounting Standards Board, just to be neutral in gender, is because we see this as a building block approach. Elko just talked about how important it is to bring investors on board and how strong a voice investors are. And so because our mandate as the IFRS Foundation, it's interesting because I'm talking to regulators across different African countries, and they're all having to go back to their act that enables their action to amend it because it references the International Accounting Standards Board And so they're now having to rewrite to incorporate the International Sustainability Standards Board to allow them to actually cover sustainability. And as you know, governments can be slow. So I don't mean to defend government here, but I'm saying that they're one of our key stakeholders. And actually, they also need capacity building, support, learning. Yesterday, when I was speaking to accountants from 17 different African countries, together with other standard setters in the room, kindly organized by PAFA, one of the things that we talked about was learning, unlearning, and relearning. And I'm looking at the back of the room here at our students. And one of the things that we ended up that room honestly saying is, look, this whole sustainability space and all the terminology is really scary. So one of the things that we need to do is we just need to simplify it. One of the key themes that was talked about was, by the first two speakers and the third, the power and the importance of you call it MSME, I call it MSMEs, right? And that's the world I come from. I spent 23 years at the base of the pyramid working in microfinance. And, with Scope 3, which is part of climate, we're going to have to work with SMEs and MSMEs. And it's going to be very important also to large firms. Why am I positive about this? Because I ran a 10-year program with MTN empowering the base of the pyramid. I won a 7-year program with Unilever, 7,000 women entrepreneurs at the base of the pyramid. At a time when some of the FMCG sales went down by 11%, the sales at the base of the pyramid went up 8%. At a time when primary healthcare centers couldn't reach the most remote locations to say, wash your hands and use masks, these 7,000 rural women who do door-to-door, 100 households per day, sent that message out. So honestly, the one thing that I disagree with sometimes is that we need to teach the MSMEs about sustainability or even about circularity, because we don't. They know it. They understand how to manage scarce resources. So to some extent, we are the ones that need to step back, especially on the African continent, and learn and listen. But the main message I wanted to give today, and the reason why I'm so grateful to Douglas for inviting me and Tendai, is because we have an MOU, GRI and ISSB, on paper and in talk. One of the conversations we have here, so the ISSB is no longer just, one, the piece of the IFRS Foundation that covers sustainability alongside the International Accounting Standards Board. The fact that Bruce and I are here together, having conversations here at the Joburg Stock Exchange with SAICA, with the Integrated Reporting Committee, is evidence of the fact that we need to align sustainability thinking and financial reporting. They need to come together. They literally need to be integrated, not just connected. And this is something that we need to live every day. Secondly, I was listening to you, so I am actually also German and I am African. So I come from a dual heritage. I understand this thing about being. And the last physical speech I gave, which is becoming less rare these days because we've all been doing it virtually, was in Appenzell. And I went to Appenzell because after I left Dangote, I spent 2 years working on circular economy. Circular economy is one space where you bring the operations, the rethinking of business models, environment, job creation, and economic impact all together. And I went there because, and this is something I thought to myself, Africa needs to learn. In the tiniest village, CEOs from all over the world came together to a place sponsored by Brauerei Locher. For 25 years, and Karl Locher, who is a bit like Professor Mervyn King here, feisty older man who for 25 years has been experimenting, right? So this is the story, and I'm just going to say it, even if Mervyn's going to kill me. So we had a meeting with him, Bruce and I, 2 days ago, and I walked him to his car, and I had the opportunity to be chauffeured by Mervyn, who's 85 years old, drives a car where my knees were creaking to get into. It's a hybrid car. And he offered to drive me back to the entrance of the hotel. And I'm just going to say that when I'm 85, I'm going to be telling that story. And I'm going to be just like that. And this is how Karl Locher is. So I absolutely agree with Elko Businesses are key, not just big business, but small business. I think what is really important for the world to understand is, and I'll end here, ISSB has integrated, for instance, the SASB standards. I know we're all hitting the US, but they also created the SASB standards, which is sustainability reporting and standards for 77 industries. And that's built into the Appendix B of one of our 2 exposure drafts. The second piece is TCFD and CDSB, and I know these are acronyms, sorry, but go and read them, have also been built into the exposure drafts that we've built. And we're working very closely with the IASB and will be working closely, are already working closely with GRI to ensure that we have a building block approach that starts from financial reporting. Bear in mind, in Africa, all but one country are IFRS compliant. The entire Middle East is IFRS compliant in terms of accounting standards. They've adopted them. So that's the foundation, and that's investment, and we all know financial reporting, and we have tons of accountants who are very smart in that regard. The second layer is sustainability reporting the way we see it. And it doesn't mean actually financial materiality is not just about what affects the business, because what affects the business affects the society. And I think for Africa, more than anywhere else, where literally every individual, and especially women, are businesses. There is no such thing as a housewife in Africa, because she's all a self-contained business running her enterprise, which is her home. And very often, not just her home, her community. So business matters. And if we control business and business owns sustainability, then business influences everything else. And business is the first to recognize that if its natural resources are threatened in the long term, it has no future. And that is what we have the mandate to do as the IFRS Foundation's ISSB. What we need outside of that is we need to collaborate with organizations which for over 20 years have been working on multi-stakeholder approaches and have a broad reach across Africa, like GRI and its partners, in order to expand that. So that's what we call the building block approach. And it's got to be collaborative, and we have to come together, and we have to come together now. And we need the younger generation to hold this really tight, listen really sharp. You're much sharper than we are, much smarter and much more progressive, and hold us accountable. But not just hold us accountable, you actually have to lead the way. Thank you very much.
So many beautiful thoughts there, Dr. Noli Ndozi, and thank you very much for coming up to address us and for noting the presence of our students in the room who actually are the leaders, not of tomorrow, of today, because we need your help right now. Okay, let me introduce our next guest. We're developing a more nuanced understanding of ESG, and the question arises as we do that as to whether there is a distinction to be made between ESG and sustainability. Now, here to answer that question for us is Global Head of Sustainability at Investec, Tanya dos Santos. She's a dedicated mother, passionate sustainability practitioner, and ardent conservationist. She's also head of Investec's Rhino Lifeline. Welcome, Ms. dos Santos.
Good morning, everyone. So I decided to wear yellow and bring a bit of sunshine into the room on Spring Day. And Tiki, I really blend in well with your branding as well, so I can be an ambassador. So when Tiki asked me if I would come and talk about ESG versus sustainability, I immediately said yes, because this is something I feel very passionately about. 8 minutes is quite a challenge, so I've made 8 slides. We've got 8 points in 8 minutes. Going to check my time, and here goes. Okay, so from an Investec perspective, we have been on this sustainability journey for more than 20 years now. So our first sustainability report, and it was called Our Journey to Sustainability, was written in 2001. So this is not something new to us, and that word sustainability is not something new to us. But then over the years, because it didn't become natural, people started introducing other language, and we had our business responsibility, and we had corporate responsibility, and all kinds of other language. And in the last few years, we've had this term ESG, which has just confused people even more. So I personally feel very strongly why ESG is misleading and that there are many risks to only focusing on ESG, and why we need to understand the broader concept of sustainability. And one of my big bugbears, and I literally hear this every single day, is that the E versus S versus G argument. And I keep hearing we're focusing too much on the E, what about the S? Especially in South Africa, we've got job creation, we've got so many other issues, we've got to stop this climate stuff, we've got to focus on people. And that will be the fundamental downfall of our economy if we don't focus on climate, because the E is the basis of everything else. If we don't focus on the E, we won't have a society, we won't have an economy, and there will be nothing to govern. So I do feel very strongly that while I'm not saying it comes first, it does need to be understood. And the biggest problem here is your short-term view versus your long-term view, because people want to focus on the short-term impacts on society versus those long-term impacts on environment. Someone else will take care of that. So there is a distinction between ES and G, and they are equally important, and we need to ensure that we do not let the E get overridden by the S. Our executive did struggle with this concept, and lots of people did just think it was philanthropy and corporate social investment for a long time. So we developed a very simple framework for understanding ESG. People started to grasp ESG because there's specific definitions, environmental, social, governance. So you can actually now start to populate, what does that mean? So for us, it was, okay, fine, we've got these 3 areas of ESG, but then how does that impact on our people, on our operations, on our products and services, and through our philanthropy activities? And there are loads of things that you can populate in that box, but that's the very problem with it. It puts things in boxes. So that starts to become a tick box, and it's about measurements and metrics, and it speaks to how you are managing what you are doing, rather than the broader impact of how you're doing it. So for me, there's an E missing in ESG, which is an efficient economy. And I think that the head of GRI explained that quite well. He spoke about profit. For me, we need an efficient economy in order for us to be able to have sustainable impact. And that means economic participants. That means people who are being uplifted and participating in helping to grow the economy. But that's not all. We've just heard about materiality. We're missing that when we just focus on ESG, because once again, we're trying to fill boxes. We have to understand, and especially from a GRI perspective, we've been reporting in terms of GRI since 2004. So I can happily say, we're tried and tested advocates of the GRI reporting mechanism. You have to focus on what is material. You cannot do everything. So when it comes to reporting, that big sustainability report, that's not the materiality. What is put in the integrated report, what is included in the financial report, what they're saying within their risk mitigation and risk management. When you're hearing a CEO talk about business strategy, that's where you have to be incorporating sustainability, not a separate report that is literally ticking the boxes for a number of sustainability rating agencies. So we've got materiality. Then the other risk I find when focusing on ESG is that it's easy to miss positive impacts. I generally talk about impact as being positive, but you can have negative and positive impact. So positive impacts, we use the Sustainable Development Goals. I think that is the correct framework that we should be using. But when you focus on ESG, you very quickly and easily forget to focus on sustainability and the sustainable impacts. So we've got ESG plus efficient economy plus materiality plus impact. So for us at Investec, sustainability is embedded in our purpose. Our purpose is to create enduring worth, living in, not off society. And 2 very key words in that, enduring, which talks to long-term. This is not just a short-term focus, and worth. Worth being more than just wealth or profit. Worth is value across all areas of people, planet, and profit. So sustainability for us is about, firstly, contributing in a positive and responsible way to the health of our economy, our people, our communities, and the environment, while building resilient, profitable businesses that support our clients and enable them to grow their businesses. So, purpose before profit. And I think, that switch is subtle, but it's so powerful. And in conclusion, I just want to say we are starting to see a lot of new terminology coming through. And that's just really the shifting of the mindset, because is sustainability enough? Is just being sustainable enough? It's sustainable, but we should actually be looking at regenerative. Sustainable is you just getting through. Net zero, okay, well, making sure we're not having any negative impact. But actually, we should be talking net positive. And for me, net positive is companies that are ensuring that they contribute more to the world than they take from it, not just equalizing what impacts they are having. Thank you.
We are up against the clock, Ms. Dos Santos, but thank you for that. I mean, I love the way you spoke about language there. It really is fascinating because language governs our perspectives in terms of how we act. And I think some of the ideas around bringing down the Chinese walls between ESG, adding further dimensions to it, are so fascinating. Thank you for bringing that perspective. It was really fantastic. So I'm now going to move into a slightly different area. You've heard much about how companies go about their sustainability reporting. Ms. Dos Santos just gave us an example there of the kind of issues they were grappling with within her company. But let's get to the real purpose of it with Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Safaricom, Mr. Stephen Kiptonis. And Mr. Kiptonis is responsible for Safaricom's reputation management, their public policy, legal and regulatory affairs, and steering the development and implementation of Safaricom's corporate investment strategy, as well as overseeing internal and external communications. Mr. Kiptonis, won't you please come up? Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to give a shout out to the university students here, as was done by the earlier speaker, especially because in my other life, besides Safaricom, I actually teach at the University of Nairobi School of Law, and one of the courses that I teach is on law, science, and technology, and we talk about the environment and the social contract that the policymakers, governments, and the private sector should have with society. And it's really important that that comes out because, and I like what you said, Joanne, about they being the leaders of today. From the time I had black hair, I used to be told I'm the leader of tomorrow, and tomorrow never seemed to come. And I almost seem to feel that I'm missing out on something. But I'm here to talk about our story as Safaricom on sustainability and sustainable business, because it's really crucial to us as Safaricom and the mirror that reporting is. And I like what was said, that you're not just checking a box to report for the sake of reporting, but you are actually getting to grips with what that means. It's a mirror that you're holding up to yourself, to the society. And to ensure also that when the investors are asking those questions, government, the policymakers are paying attention so that they get pushed in that direction. Let me just make a few formal remarks and then I'll sort of wrap up. I'm not going to read everything I have, but this is really the story of Safaricom, and my device needs to cooperate with me. Let me get my face there. There we go. I failed to do that. Just for purposes of protocol, Your Excellency, it's interesting to hear about your story, having been in South Africa. I dare you to come to Kenya. You might change your story. But, Your Excellency, it's a pleasure to meet you here and all the distinguished guests here. And the story of Safaricom started when the company started about over 20 years ago, in the year 2000. And we have been talking about sustainability and sustainable business in a very nascent way, and in the last sort of 7-10 years, coming up to speed with it. One of the things that is important for us, and this was mentioned by the doctor, I forget her name, my apologies, about how women are a very crucial stakeholder in sustainability and sustainable business because, and I like what she said, it's not a housewife, it's not a woman taking care of a home, she's taking care of a business, and the potential for that woman, that mother, that wife to do a lot in terms of propagating this story on sustainability is crucial. Safaricom, I'm sure most of you have heard of what we do. We're part of the larger Vodacom group, and in Vodacom and Vodafone, we talk about having a social contract with the communities that we are living and working in. We ask ourselves consistently, what are we doing? How are we impacting them? And this is not just for the sake of sustainability in terms of what we do for schools, for programs, feeding programs, etc. It's about our products. Are our products, our commercial products, asking the question at the point of innovation, are these good? Are these contributing to the betterment of society? These are the commercial products I'm talking about, not just the sustainable, pure sustainable side of the business. We are a fairly large fintech company in the context of our financial services. You probably have heard of M-Pesa, and that has been very crucial to fitting into our purpose of transforming lives. How are lives transformed? Without M-Pesa in our economy today, we would see a huge contraction. In fact, it's been said that it is such a systemic risk right from the lower levels to how government payments are made. The kind of people that are reliant on M-Pesa are not just businesses, governments, but that housewife, that woman, that child paying school fees, paying for their everyday needs. And we're trying to ask ourselves with every product that comes out of our M-Pesa, as part of our M-Pesa product, how do we impact society? How do we give back and ensure that this is increasing the capacity of Safaricom to leave a community impact? As far as we are concerned, we'd reduce sort of the sustainable business and sustainability impact discussion into sort of three broad purposes in terms of reporting. Measuring how you are doing is really crucial. That report, as was said by the head of GRI, is not so much about checking a box and reporting for the sake of reporting, but asking yourself, have we made progress from the last reporting cycle? I like the term that was used, greenwash, where you would, in financial reporting, be held accountable for fraud. You'd be responsible for, giving out wrongful, fraudulent information. How do we do that in the context of sustainability? So the information that we give as part of our sustainable reporting has to be checked against the fact, against the science, in order to ensure that you're reporting correctly. You're not sort of, window dressing for the sake of trying to fit in. So for us, how you report and the measurement of it is absolutely central. Accountability to those investors, and I'd widen that to also say our stakeholders, of whom include government. One of the largest shareholders in our business is the government of Kenya. And to that extent, it allows us to be a voice within and towards the government to say, we need to have a policy approach to how sustainability happens in our country. If the policymakers don't get into it and it's just the private sector, and granted, the private sector can make quite a huge impact, but government will make those policies, will make that legislation, those regulations that will hold everybody else accountable so that it moves from voluntary accountability to statutory accountability. So the accountability to external and internal stakeholders for us as Safaricom is really key. We have to hold ourselves, and we do hold ourselves as Safaricom, accountable to all our stakeholders, starting from government, to our investors, to our students, to what we call the mamambogas, the lady who sells her daily wares on the side of the road. How are we impacting her? Does she feel that? So I think it also goes to the communication. And we're talking with Saint earlier today. How do you communicate what you are doing in a way that's understandable by that person at the bottom of the pyramid? And finally, in terms of the long-term purpose and success of the business, it was said that if you don't report correctly, if you don't report with the facts, not only would you be held accountable, if you're considered not to have or to have betrayed the trust that the society, the community has put on you, you will lose money. And that mirror that you hold up then allows the society to say, no, last time you told us this, you're not making progress. We're not moving to net zero. We need to move to net positive. And the accountability that comes our way would mean we potentially could lose business if we don't do the right thing. So ladies and gentlemen, I think sustainability reporting is about holding up a mirror and being honest about how you look. Do I need to go to the gym to lose some weight? I guess I will need to go to the gym to work out a bit more. And when we hold up that mirror to ourselves, we're also holding it up to the rest of society so that they can tell us, yeah, we think you've made some progress. You've lost 10 kilos. You could lose another 10 kilos. I'm sorry I'm using that example. I don't want to cause offense in the room. I do like going to the gym. But it's holding up a mirror to ourselves and to the society to say, hold us accountable so that we can continue making progress and not be stagnant in the same spot we were for the last couple of years. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I've stuck within the time.
Dennis, don't leave us yet.
Okay.
We are going to go into our panel discussion very shortly. And thank you so much for
Should I
those
sit down
insights.
or-
I'm going to ask you to
Okay,
stay on stage for us, please. Grab a seat for us, because we are about to begin our panel discussion with Mr. Kiptonis and two other guests who join us right now. There are so many questions that we need to ask. Are there any questions or comments from you at this point? I'd love to take one or two. Okay, we've got two students sitting next to each other. I'm going to take both of you. Do we have a roving mic? Yes, we do. Okay, that mic is being passed down. And just tell us your name, please. And you're welcome to tell us who you would like to ask the question to. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Mohale Lisiba Mohatle, and I'm a student at the University of Johannesburg. I'd like to direct a question to the madam from Germany. I forgot her name.
From Switzerland, or no, Germany, Dr. Ndidi. Oh, I think she's actually had to leave. She had another appointment. Sorry about that.
But if there's like anyone with the capacity to answer,
Yes.
please feel free. My question was like, how can businesses optimize how they function without adversely affecting the environment if their main source of business does not really adhere to sustainability
Excellent
statutes?
question. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to put that to our panel to
Okay,
start
ma'am.
off with. And can we have the question from the gentleman next to you?
All right. I'm Neo Bodile, student at UJ studying strategic communications. And this question is posed to the whole panel. We have mentioned ESG and sustainability. However, we haven't touched base on how technology necessarily impacts sustainability, and as well as the role of tech in driving rather sustainability. So can we have,
Lovely questions. Thank you. I'm going to take those two questions and I'm going to invite our other two panel members up right now. The two panel members joining us at this point are Saint Francis Tohlang, who is, of course, from Nestle. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Saint Francis, please come up and take your place on the panel. And Mr. Tohlang oversees the corporate communications and public affairs portfolio for Nestle East and Southern Africa region, comprising 23 countries, which means he sometimes lives out of a suitcase for long periods of time. And I'd like to welcome as well the head of sustainability engagement at Anglo American, Ms. Hermine Boertes. Thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Boertes. Lovely to have you as well. And Ms. Boertes has been instrumental in developing Anglo American's innovative and ambitious sustainable mining plan. Her current role focuses on engagement within civil society, human rights, and gender-based violence in mining. So welcome to you both. I'm going to grab a seat next to you. But I'm going to ask one of you to just start with that question that was posed by the first student. How do you embrace sustainability when your business doesn't necessarily lend itself to that? Who on our panel would like to take that question?
I think you're looking at the mining lady, aren't you?
Yeah. It was inevitable. Sorry about that, Ms. Burtis.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I wanted to comment on your spring socks. I saw it.
Thank you. I'm glad you noticed.
Very nice. Oh, it's a really tricky one. You know, it's a debate that we have internally, and you know, just never know where you land with it, because the definition of mining is extracting finite resources, and you can have a problem with that for sure, but you can't deny the fact that we need those resources in our phones. Literally anything is either made using machinery that is that we get essentially from mining, or is a mined product itself. So that's a debate, and you can go round and round in circles. You can say, oh, look, there is a degree of environmental harm, but the benefits are just so profound that there are, you know, trade-offs that need to be made. But I think that the conversation really needs to be about responsible mining, because you can do it in a way that is responsible and that absolutely minimizes harm to the environment. We do have some ambitious targets in that regard. So we have a net positive biodiversity target. So we do believe that we can go into an environment and leave it in a better condition than in what it was before. It is exceptionally difficult, but we fundamentally believe that that's what mining needs to be. Is it now? Not quite, but that's certainly where we're going.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ms. Burtis. The second question was the role of tech in driving sustainability. Can I ask one of you to answer that? Mr. Kiptonis, would you be able to take that?
Yeah, let me just add to what was said earlier about taking out of the environment. One of the things that is a feature of the networks that we run is diesel generators for base stations in rural areas. You know, diesel obviously not necessarily the best form of energy and what it puts into the environment. But if businesses are honest in cultivating trust, it may very well mean that in the short term, you will probably have to accept contracted revenues, greater investment into converting into a sustainable business. What that could mean for a network company like ours is investing more in solar power generation and moving away from diesel power. The investment is, of course, going to be much higher and not necessarily having a correlation of positive revenue or profits. But you have to go through that contraction again if you're going to be honest and try to build that trust to show the community, to show society that we are willing to spend more money to become compliant so that our businesses start running in a way that is beneficial and positive to the environment. One of the other things that we're doing besides trying to install solar power as a cleaner form of power is to move, and I really was challenged by by moving towards net positive, not just net zero, but we're investing quite heavily in our environments, in our trees, in our part of the world, to make sure that we are trying to give back what we might be taking out. And I think that's the ultimate goal. But the short answer to the question is businesses would have to face a contraction in their profits as they invest significantly to turn around, and that's part of the trust building that's necessary. The question on technology, apologies, remind me, what is it about again?
Yes, technology driving sustainability. What is the role of it in driving sustainability?
I think technology is perhaps one of the most amazing things in giving the capacity to leapfrog through and over certain disadvantages or demerits as to how businesses run in society. Digitization and the capacity to digitize different communities. And for us, what that means in the context of being a technology company is we look at our strengths in the tech space or in the telco space as being able to leave an impact in schools, in communities that aren't able to access, say, education at the same levels as schools in the cities, as fairly wealthy schools. So how do we leverage by providing connectivity? How do we leverage by providing affordable devices? One of the things that we are trying to do is to provide affordable devices, smartphones, which would allow people in the community who are doing small businesses or micro enterprises to access information, knowledge, data that can cause them to grow. If we are going to support a school, then how about investing in solar power to help power the school? So what technology can do is provide the opportunity to go over and beyond some of the poorer sources, some of the negatively impactful measures of energy in the society. So I think technology gives us the opportunity in Africa to grow a lot faster in a cleaner way. And that's through, I think, education, through supporting educational initiatives at a very basic level or at a tertiary level in a way that allows, university students to have far better opportunities, that allows children to dream even more, but essentially have the mindset and the knowledge that we need to take care of our society in a way that we weren't shown when we were growing up. I mean, we are growing up with digital natives today. I mean, the children we're bringing up are digital natives. So I think that in itself is a story as to how technology can cause a much greater appreciation of what society is.
Thank you, Mr. Kiptonis. Mr. Tshlang, in your view, what are the biggest stumbling blocks right now, not just to compliance, but to entrenching these practices as a kind of positive new prism through which we think about engaging in people, engaging in a planet-centered, profitable business?
Thank you so much, and good morning to everyone. I think the discussions this morning have been quite rich and very resonant. So a lot of what my point of view has been shared, but I think it's about languaging and positioning. When we think about sustainability or ESG and the merits of E versus S and G and the differences thereof, I think it's much of the same. However, it's about positioning. And what do I mean by that? When we think about compliance, right, automatically I think from a business perspective, we think, let's protect our license to operate. We do it because we have to. If you talk about opportunity in business, everyone gets excited, right? That's one of the most exciting things in a business when you talk about opportunity. And I don't think we position ESG sustainability positively in the sense that it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make an impact. It's an opportunity to be differentiated as an organization. It's an opportunity to do good. It's an opportunity to do the right thing. And so I think also touching on the question around technology and for businesses that don't lend themselves to sustainability, when we frame that as opportunity, it's incredible the mind power, the innovativeness, the solutions, leveraging technology, because we see it as an opportunity. And so we think about sustainability, we think about ESG as an opportunity to do good. It's an opportunity to make an impact. And I think languaging is quite important. Dr. Adosian spoke about language. When we talk about compliance, I think automatically we don't think about the opportunity. We don't think about circular economy, regenerative, which, by the way, circular economy makes a lot of business sense. It is an opportunity to future-proof your business. Yeah. So why are we not thinking about circular economy models within our business? And so from a Nestle perspective, just to share practically and realistically how does this come to life, as an executive committee, we made the decision not to have a standalone sustainability department because we felt it was important that we inculcate sustainability by design within the organization. So I'm one of the executive sponsors for sustainability. There's two of us. And we have a matrix approach to sustainability where we want every single layer of the organization to view sustainability as an opportunity to rethink our business model, to reduce the impact that we have on the environment, and to repurpose, i.e. leading the way in applying circular economy principles in our organization. So I spoke about languaging. I am a communicator, and that was quite important. And so RE is the way in which we speak about our sustainability approach, it consolidates everything that we do from a sustainability perspective, but also it is so accessible not only to our consumers, not only to the different stakeholders, but within our own organization, that when we think about sustainability, when we think about ESG, we're rethinking our business models, we're reducing the impact that we have on the environment, and ultimately we want to repurpose, which is bringing to life circular economy principles.
On that note, Ms. Botha, I mean, many South African companies, for example, have been accused of greenwashing. And what Mr. Dishlang is talking about there is complete integration. We've had CSI projects in the past, and I think Ms. Dos Santos has actually pointed out what happens when this division exists between your sort of CSI projects and the sustainability projects that you should be integrating into the business. Are companies integrating these ideas to the point that communities on the ground are actually feeling like they're not just a charity initiative, like they're part of an initiative to change the outlook for the entire country?
Yeah, it felt like there were a few questions there, so maybe I'll do one thought and then give an example on, or at least a thought on communities on the ground. So about greenwashing, I think that we really have moved beyond a stage where that's vaguely acceptable. You're even seeing litigation where companies are being taken to court, not for what they have or not for negative impact, but because they said something in a sustainability report in a public statement that was untrue. So that fraud point that was made earlier on, I thought was just so important. But an example of that is, I think a lot of you might be aware of the report that Rio Tinto released not too long ago on workplace culture, including racism, bullying, sexual harassment. And that is, in a sense, reporting. It goes beyond reporting, it's disclosure. There was no indicator that said that they had to do that. What they did was they sat back and they went, guys, we've got a problem. And we can go about this in a number of different ways. What they chose to do was put some really bad news out there in a completely uncensored way. And they got into a lot of trouble for it. Okay, it was on the one hand well received because the honesty was appreciated, but the stuff in that report was absolutely horrible. But what they did is made sure that everyone else was holding a bit of a mirror to themselves by doing something incredibly brave. And part of my job is GBV, and we've been doing work on that for some time. But ever since that report, we've got investors asking us questions about that. So what they did through a very tough decision has triggered change.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was such a profound move, and I hope that that will show other companies that you can have honest conversations and take the knocks, but that's how you build trust in the end. So when it comes to the question of how communities experience companies, mining again is very difficult because the benefit that people feel out of mining is the phone that you hold or the car that you drive, whereas the impacts typically are quite local. So we're constantly in this battle of trying to localize positive impact, acknowledging that that's where all the dust is and that's where all the noise is. And for that reason, we've almost completely moved away from a CSI philanthropic model to deliver benefits through core business. So if there's a construction contract, we try to make sure that it's local. It's billions and billions of rands that we put into, say, the Northern Cape economy in order to do that. There's still a place for CSI. An orphanage is never going to be a profitable business. There are vulnerable people who will need help, and that's okay. But absolutely, we've moved away from that being this sort of add-on, and we don't have a sustainability strategy. We've got a business strategy. Yeah. And in that, our plans to reach sustainability goals.
That really makes a lot of sense. Do you want to add something, Mr. Dishlang?
Very passionate about this topic. So if you'll indulge me, I'm conscious of time. I think creating shared value, right? The shared value initiative. And when you unpack what does creating shared value mean, I think it's a very, very important dynamic to the conversation. Creating shared value means that everyone gets the benefit of the value that you are creating, right? An important part of creating shared value is to understand the value of what it is that you're creating or the perception of the value for the communities. And so oftentimes there's an approach in which we assume, we don't bring in the community in, we don't collaborate, we don't partner. And I think that's really remiss, and there's something fundamentally problematic. So when we think about CSI or corporate social responsibility, we just call it creating shared value. And when that is anchored in your philosophy and your approach in terms of how do we share this value with all the different stakeholders involved in the value chain, it's incredibly powerful. But not assuming what is value for them. It's bringing in the community in. It is making sure that they are also having a point of view, collaborating with you. How do we make this come to life? Brief example. Creating shared value. What does that mean for us as Nestlé? We go, particularly in the East and Southern Africa region, realizing enabled and empowered African livelihoods. That's the anchor. So whatever we do working with communities, we want to enable livelihoods. We want to empower livelihoods. And so while we've defined for ourselves sustainability and circular economy as one of the pillars of that model, livelihoods, so how do we support livelihoods? Working particularly with a vested focus on the agricultural supply chain, that's important for our business. But oftentimes with rural development, that is a core source of economic activity, opportunity, and livelihood. And then we look at training and skills development, particularly youth and women, because as we've heard, Dr. Edozie, and I think you mentioned it, women are really the bloodline of communities. And so we focus on those 4 pillars, but it is important that we bring in the community such that we're building trust. Our intentions are pure. We want to work with you. We don't want to make assumptions. And therefore, with that model, we're able to create so much power in enabling and empowering, so much power in the impact that we have. And guess what? We're clear on where we as Nestlé believe we create the value, but that has been endorsed and the trust is there from the community. And so it's a win-win, and we create that shared value across the entire value chain.
Thanks, Mr. Tohlang. A couple more questions from the audience at this point. We have some people here. Can we bring the mic down here, please? Okay. You do have the mic.
Hi,
yes, so go ahead.
Vincent Abisioli from Good Governance Africa. I'm a researcher. My work generally focuses around ESG and these questions that are being engaged with in this meeting. I'd like to ask, how is, in your view, how do we navigate this issue and challenge of offsets? Because carbon offsets are a very common part in which companies present their net zero, net positive ambitions. And carbon offsets are very much an unregulated market, and there's a lot of offset washing, if you will. So how do we navigate that in the ambition of moving towards a net positive sustainability or regenerative future?
Thank you. Lovely question. Let's take a couple more. A batch. Can we have the mic down here, please? Sorry, I see all the hands up. I'm going to try to take as many questions as I possibly can. We're running a little bit late. Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Oli Mabombo Benson. I represent ProSera, an organization that works with non-profits to address exactly these kinds of problems or challenges. All of this that I hear, what element is missing for me, similar to what was mentioned about the technology, is really about the human being behind all of this. And the Rio Tinto story for me is particularly inspiring, actually, in that, you know, we as human beings operate on looking good and being right. And that's survival tactics. In some elements, things that we're being asked to do to address the challenges of ESG and ESG reporting require us to look bad. And there isn't anything I'm hearing in the conversation about how do we support human beings in dealing with how looking bad in the short term has an impact in the trust that is built in the long term. And I think this then will also address across industries, the non-profit and the for-profit sector, when we talk about regenerating value. You know, non-profits do generate value even though it's not a profit. And so looking at themselves in a similar way that corporates are looking at themselves is what we're trying to drive. And so for me, what I've seen is that it's the human being behind it. And how do we start to address those mindsets? How do we start to support people to actually have the courage to do what is necessary?
Yeah, great question. Thank you very much for that. Let's take a third question. Sorry, our roving mic runner is getting quite a lot of exercise this morning. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. How you guys doing? I'm Mandilula Manjezi. I'm the president, the South African president of the Young Pan Globalist. And basically what we are doing as the Young Pan Globalist, specifically the South African branch, is that we are working fundamentally with the African Union Student Commission in trying to create conversations as to how youth can fundamentally be involved and participate in the Free Africa Trade Agreement. We're having discussions concerning policy, legislation. I'm just saying this all in this manner because we're also hosting a conference at the University of Pretoria between the 28th and 30th September. And we essentially want to bring corporate into our space as the youth so that we can also learn your culture of how business does, as well as corporate also having an opportunity to understand youth and also how youth foresee South Africa, Southern Africa, and Africa, not 2063, but even right around the corner, 2030. And we have plans and projects in which we seek to implement, but we seek to be held hands with business, with government, because we are getting our ducks in a row as well, as you can see, as you can hear. The African Union Student Commission, I must also say, is that they're in the process of also having an MOU agreement with the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, because we really want to go about addressing the Africa diaspora with also veterans who have worked and have talked, and we want to also participate in that journey.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you're asking how you can do that?
So the
Or
question
how,
is essentially is how do we then welcome business in our community of environment, in our community that we're trying to create for the future and us for the present, as well as concerning sustainability, training and skills development, conversations around incubation program within the universities to support student entrepreneurs is also a conversation, and we would want to have those conversations with you guys.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, can we start with that last question, please? I'm going to ask you to take that question because you started off speaking to the youth primarily and speaking to their importance in building the sustainable future. Would you like to try and answer how corporate actually holds hands with them during this process
Sure.
and brings them into it, or how you are brought into their space?
Right. Yeah, I guess I walked into it. So I think we weren't, certainly I wasn't being flippant when I mentioned the fact that the youth really need to take the bull by the horns and, as was said, hold us accountable. You've heard it said that we are, and folk much older than myself, are really supposed to hold this society, this universe in trust for those who are behind us. And that is why revolutions get started by much younger people. And that's the kind of energy and passion that we need to see, so that it's less about waiting, sitting back to see the opportunities being created by the policy makers, and demanding to sit at that table. For us as Safaricom, the youth segment is really crucial, and not necessarily because it will lead to any direct impact to our bottom line, but because we realize that we need to create a valuable, strong, youthful team in Africa. Now, one of the things that Africa can really get good at, and there's a lot of investment that's been made by multinationals in different parts of the continent on the technological side. Certainly as Safaricom, we've seen quite a number of job losses by people leaving our organization to go and work for some of the world-beating technology companies that have set up incubation hubs, innovation hubs, just around the whole innovation side in Kenya, in Nigeria, in South Africa. And that's a good sign for the continent. Why we want our voice to be heard as Safaricom is through partnerships with tertiary institutions around supporting the growth of digital skilling, so that we can speak into the training, we can speak into the resources that the tertiary institutions need to have, so that they can create a vibrant youth that are qualified to take these opportunities. I mean, I did see an advertisement the other day, I can't remember whether it was Microsoft, but advertising for young coders to take up jobs in parts of Europe and in the US. If they were willing to move, obviously they'd have to go through a process. That obviously wouldn't happen. In other words, if you were willing to do that, you'd have to have the relevant necessary skills. So the Free Continental Trade, the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement is one such agreement that hopefully could lead to the much greater freedom of movement of persons to take opportunities. And when I say persons, this is AKA youth on the continent. So holding your local leaders accountable so that when they're speaking in this fora at the continental level, it is your voice that is being put there. But perhaps it starts at a very basic level by whom you choose for your leaders, for the countries in Africa that have the option. I understand that, in Africa sometimes we don't have the option of choosing the leaders that we want. And I say that Kenya, we're going through an election right now. There's a petition at the Supreme Court. But what I'm saying is this. The demand to have your voice there. And when I engage with university students, and I was in private practice before I joined Safaricom, the opportunities that youth are asking for when they demand to sit on the table cannot be ignored. And I think that is really what I'm pushing back to you to say, get those opportunities, take them by the hand, show that robustness, that passion that we need to be at the table. And that way you start getting the opportunities which can then go to the much younger people.
Thanks very much, Mr. Kiptonis. The question about what I think is reputational management, who would like to take that question? Yes, about the element of the human being and how bad reporting can sometimes make you look.
Yeah, I'd love to take that question because it's something that's really important to me. And I've been thinking a lot about making mistakes in a corporate context. And so much about sustainability is innovation. These are problems, very difficult problems that we're dealing with, or very difficult opportunities. And the fact that they've not been solved means that innovation is required. And for some reason in scientific innovation, you anticipate problems. The whole scientific method is about making a mistake here and then you move in that direction. And for some reason in the business world, that's a no-no. You can't make mistakes. You get penalized for it. And it's the same often in the schooling system where you get this big red mark if you make a mistake. And we're just taught that that's not what you can do. So, I mean, I'm articulating the problem here as I see it. I think one of the ways that we get around that is by some brave people and some brave companies being able to put up their hands and saying, we've got a problem, we've made a mistake. It makes it so much easier for everyone else to follow that path when they see there is a way out of it. But at an Anglo-American level, we've got a big program on psychological safety. And it is a deliberate attempt at making people feel safe to speak up when they see something that's wrong, or when they've done something that's wrong is probably not the right word. Because as a boss, you want to know if stuff's gone wrong, and you then need to accept someone giving you that message warmly as opposed to punishing people for that. So I think that's one of the ways that you can just deliberately in your corporate culture do it. And I can give an example. I sat with our Anglo Platinum CEO the other day after having made a mistake, and I put up my hand and said, "Look, that didn't go right." And she said, "A mistake would be not learning from it. What happened there wasn't the mistake." And I thought, okay, this is the kind of leadership we need.
All right. Thank you so much for that to our panel. I'm hoping to come back to your question a little bit later on, the question about carbon offsets, but we do have a guest who is standing by for us now, an international guest. And thank you so much for your insights, because, you were able to open up so many aspects of the conversation to us in a bit more detail. So thank you very much, Mr. Tuchlang, Ms. Puertas, Mr. Kiptonis. I'll ask you to please make your way back to your seats now. Very, very grateful indeed for that expertise. Let me introduce you to our next speaker. She's under a little bit of time pressure, but has been kind enough to hang on for us. She is the Chief Regional Officer at the Global Reporting Initiative. Her name is Astilde Hjaltadottir. She oversees the work of GRI's 7 regional hubs, having been with GRI for more than 15 years in a variety of roles, including previously managing GRI's reporting services, training and coaching departments. Thank you very much for joining us via Zoom all the way from Amsterdam. We appreciate your closing marks today, Ms. Hjaltadottir, and thanks indeed for your patience as well.
Hello everyone, and greetings from Amsterdam, and it's a pleasure to be with you here today. And yeah, it's very difficult to bring closing remarks to such a rich discussion. I've been making notes here, lots of such an important points that have been raised. And for instance, the importance of government has been mentioned, absolutely so important. But again, also what was mentioned is that we need to move beyond the mandatory. We actually have to make sure that we embed, which was also another word that came up. It needs to be embedded, sustainability, into the whole operation of the organization. And trust is also a word that has come up in, I think, almost all the speakers have mentioned how important trust is. And you can, of course, approach that from so many different angles, as has also been highlighted. And the fact that all of this is about people. And already back in the day when I joined GRI over 15 years ago, as was mentioned, we were already posing the question or trying to explain to people that there is nothing wrong with being profitable for companies. Like my CEO said, he really loves companies who are profitable. But it's about being profitable in a responsible manner, and that's I also like very much the term that was mentioned, to hold up the mirror and see what you look like as an organization, and that brings another sort of mantra or term that we have also used a lot at GRI. That it's not really about the report itself at all. It's about the reporting. What do you do with the data? What do you do with the information that you acquire about your own organization? And how can you improve that? Use that to improve your business. And also, like somebody said, it's just good business to be run a sustainable or your business in a sustainable way. Another thing that also was brought up is how can we help the smaller businesses also to stay in the game, you could say. And this made me think of another phrase that is often used in connection with the SDGs, that is to leave no one behind. And I think that's also a very important thing that we need to keep in mind, that is, of course, the SMEs or the SMMEs and all the smaller companies, they constitute over 90% of the global economy. And so we have to make sure that they also jump on the sustainability train. And this is also something that we've been working very closely with SECO on for many, many years now, in as was mentioned by the ambassador, the Swiss ambassador, both here in the African continent and also in Southeast Asia and Latin America. And we have been making good progress, so we are very happy about that. But of course, collectively, we all need to make sure that we stay tuned. And yeah, what else? You know, if we go down into some more sort of technical aspects of things, then of course what was mentioned is the double materiality. It's very important that we look at sustainability and sustainability impact from the two lenses, the financial lens and the sustainable development lens, as was very well explained by Elko. So, and this is becoming more and more prominent with the initiatives that are ongoing, both globally and also, of course, the EU Green Deal and the new European standards, etc. There is so much going on. These are such exciting teams and exciting times. Sorry, and I just wanted to conclude by thanking all of you who participated, thanking our loyal partners at SECO for being with us here today, and of course the partners who helped GRI co-organize this event with us today. It's a great event. I also heard that so there are like 50, 60 people that were in the room, and I also heard that there are around 100 others who tuned in online, which goes to show that this is a great topic of great interest, and also very happy to see the students in the room, because like was already said, yeah, you need to take over and lead us into a sustainable future. I think I will leave it at that. I could say a lot of other things, of course, also about the technology and innovation and all of that, but I promise to keep it short. And so I will just end by thanking everyone who has had a part in the event today. And yeah, hope to see you all at one point in person. That would be great. So take care and have a good rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Lovely having you all the way from Amsterdam, Ms. Hjelte Dottir. And I thank you, as the members of our audience, every participant we've had this morning who's added so much value to this conversation. It has been worthwhile. It has been a valuable interaction, and I hope there's lots you can take away with you in terms not just of new information, but in terms of new questions that will lead to new discoveries and answers, hopefully. My sincere hope is that you will enjoy the rest of the day, that you will be inspired to set in motion further positive change in your industry, within business, within the learning sphere, particularly the students who are with us today, and younger people in the room. Please, thus, as older people need the injection of your positivity, your new creative ideas, and your outlook that has not been tainted by the kind of system that we have come through. You have a chance to create something entirely new and help us to move beyond mere compliance in the future. Let's keep the conversations going and the transformational work going. From me, Joanne Joseph, many, many thanks for joining us this morning. I'm going to hand over to CEO of Shift and SVAI, Tikkie Barnard. Tikkie, thank you for your particular commitment to these ideals. I'd love you to come up and close the event for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. See, Douglas and myself were arguing about who's going to say the thank you. So because I'm smaller than him, I got bullied into doing it. So yeah, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here. Really, really rich conversation this morning. I'm sure you all have to agree with me on that. And I think it takes me back to a discussion that we have with Mark Kramer at times, talking about the disciplines and principles of creating shared value. And firstly and foremost, it is always about profitability and about creating economic value. But he always says to us, don't forget that the most important on all of that is the people. And that's what you were talking about earlier on when you asked that question. So let me be quick because I'm sure all of us are running late because we're running late. And I just want to say thank you so much. Also, thank you to the students. I'm so glad you all acknowledge them because from a shared value perspective, we believe that we need to support our youth and the leaders of the future. That's why they were here today. And we try and bring them into our events all the time so that we can expose them to all of you, our leaders, and create a space where they can participate in as well. I also want to say thanks to Stephen. He only got to bed at 2:00 this morning for flying in all the way from Safaricom. And I just have to mention to all of us in this room, please go and research Safaricom. They are our best example on the Africa continent of an organization that creates shared value other than Anglo-American. So thank you, Stephen, for that. And then last but not least, Douglas, we're here. We did it, okay? And I just want to say thank you so much to the Global Reporting Initiative. This is what collaboration is about. And for us, our motto from a Shared Value Africa perspective is that the power lies in the collaboration. So that is what we have to do today. And if there's one thing that we do, we need to go out there and we need to collaborate because that is the way that we can bring about change and make a difference. So Douglas, thank you very much, for being a partner in all of this. I think we've achieved what we wanted to do, and hopefully this will continue after this because Douglas and myself, I have to put it out there, we have a dream of doing a sustainability conference here on the Africa continent. So I have to, my dad always used to say, plant the seed and water the tree. So I'm planting the seed. Douglas, that's what I'm doing. So in closing, thank you very much to all of you that came. Thanks to the 648 people that registered online. It's not 100, it's more than the 100. So we're very proud of that. They come from about 50 different countries, which is really great. So hi to the people out there. And a last thing, I want to invite you all to our 2022 Africa. See, I got the name wrong for you. The Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit that we're hosting in Kigali this year. It's possibly one of the most important conversations we're going to have this year because we are joining forces with the Global Mobile Association, who, Stephen, as you know, represent about 750 telco companies across the globe, and we're talking connectivity. Because if we don't talk connectivity and we don't get access right and we don't get affordability right, we cannot bring about the change that we want to on this continent. So thank you all. I want to say thank you again, and please travel safely, and may God bless us all. Thank you.